Hey, what's going on, everyone? William here, and I just wanted to shoot this really quick video for you guys tonight because I've been reading through a couple of the latest posts in the Stroke Secrets Mastermind Facebook group, and I've noticed that a lot of people have been commenting how they've been experiencing, foot drop issues. How can I address supination of the foot and a lot of people in other stroke groups have also been talking about how they find that they've been having quite a lot of tightness in their legs whenever they're walking, which has obviously impacted their ability to move as well as they would like. So today I want to share with you guys a very advanced approach to your recovery after stroke, which can help to actually address a lot of the issues which are very common for people who are trying to improve their walking after stroke, and that is by using functional electrical stimulation. Now, a lot of you guys have probably heard of electrical stimulation, which is basically where you use a electrical stimulation machine or a TENS machine to help teach your brain how to turn on muscles like it used to before you had your stroke. Now, functional electrical stimulation, on the other hand, is basically using electrical stimulation, however, in a functional manner. In other words, what you're doing is you're integrating the use of electrical stimulation in your exercises to sort of boost your rate of recovery or improve the rate at which your brain is able to learn. And so I thought it would be a really good idea to share with you guys some of the ways in which you can use electrical stimulation to improve your walking after stroke, because when it's used correctly, electrical stimulation can really help you to overcome a lot of the issues such as foot drop, which are very common after stroke and quite often are caused because clients or patients or stroke survivors have not been educated on why they should do exercise and why they should do stretches after stroke and why it is that foot drop occurs after stroke. And for those of you who are relatively new to recovery after stroke or may not have received a lot of advice from your therapist, foot drop is basically something which happens when your calf muscles become so tight that the muscles which you use to lift up your ankle aren't able to overcome this tightness, and therefore whenever you walk you find that your ankle is tending to drag behind or you're tending to trip over quite often because your brain has not learnt how to contract the muscles which you use to lift up your ankle to actually lift the leg off the ground and make sure that you're able to place your foot down without tripping over. So why is electrical stimulation or functional electrical stimulation so effective for recovery after stroke? So first off, the reason why functional electrical stimulation is so effective when used properly for recovery after stroke is because it actually helps to strengthen connections which might have been lost or weakened since you had your stroke. So as we all know, after you've had your stroke, as we all know, whenever a stroke happens, our brain loses the ability to send signals to certain muscles to turn them on as well as it used to. And this is mainly due to some connections being broken or weakened due to the brain damage caused by the stroke itself. Now, what electrical stimulation does is it basically uses electricity to help contract muscles and therefore re-establish some of the connections which were lost after your stroke, or strengthen some of the connections which were weakened after your stroke. And basically this helps to facilitate a phenomenon which is called synaptic strength, which is basically a fancy term which is used to describe any connections which have been weakened after stroke or lost after stroke, which are now being strengthened by exercise or by an external source, such as the use of electrical stimulation. Now, the reason why electrical stimulation is so good is because by using it effectively, you can enhance the strength of connections or even create new connections which were lost after your stroke. Now, typically, if you were to do exercises on your own, yes, you would be able to increase the synaptic strength or the strength of connections which might have been weakened or lost after your stroke. However, with electrical stimulation, because you do have the added bonus of the extra stimulation from the electricity, what you now have is have a tool which can give your brain the exact experience of what it looked like and felt like to actually perform a movement or turn on or turn off a muscle like you used to before your stroke. And obviously, when used correctly with the knowledge and correct guidance, then it can be an effective tool not only for your walking, but also for the rest of your recovery after stroke. And that's mainly because of these two concepts up there. The concept of increasing the synaptic strength, or the strength of connections which might have been lost or weakened after your stroke due to the brain injury. And also number two, because electrical stimulation provides a direct experience of what it looked like and felt like to do something like you would have before your stroke. And going back to previous videos, which I've uploaded in the group, a lot of your recovery after stroke is experience dependent, in that your brain responds to the experiences which it's been exposed to during the day, and at nighttime it's able to create a blueprint in the brain of how to do certain things based on what it's experienced throughout the day. So earlier I mentioned the car analogy, where a lot of recovery after stroke is kind of like learning how to drive a car, in that when you learned how to first drive a car, going forward was very easy. However, when it came to reverse parking, it was actually a different ballgame. And this is because your brain had to figure out which way do you have to turn the wheel to actually get the car to park in between the two lines. You probably did the first or second time really bad, but after several more tries, you got it right that very first time. And after that first time you got it right, it was locked into your memory forever. And by discovering this light bulb moment or experience of what it looked like to successfully reverse the car into the parking spot, your brain never forgot it. And it's very similar to stroke. So sometimes in recovery after stroke, if you are, let's say you're someone who has one side which is completely paralyzed and hasn't woken up, and it's been about 1 or 2 years since your stroke. So if you're in a situation where one side of your body hasn't woken up and your brain hasn't been exposed to any experiences of what it looked like or felt like to actually move that side, electrical stimulation could be a useful tool for you to use to actually give your brain that experience, and therefore help your brain connect the dots when you're sleeping at night, so that it can create a blueprint of what it needs, of what has to happen inside the brain in order to actually do the movement which you want to relearn. And you can do this with electrical stimulation, because electrical stimulation, or functional electrical stimulation, gives the brain two inputs, in that it gives the brain an idea of what it looks like and feels like to do a particular movement, therefore helping to create a blueprint overnight inside your brain of a particular movement which it used to do before your stroke. So that's basically why electrical stimulation is really, really effective for recovery after stroke, and why by mastering the use of this tool, it can do wonders for your recovery after stroke, especially when you know what you're doing. So in order to use electrical stimulation, obviously you need a machine to do it, and a lot of people have talked about how there's huge how there are certain machines which are able to perhaps do the same thing as the other, and these groups of and the people who I've talked to have mentioned how typically using a TENS machine can do the same job. However, most of the time when you get a TENS machine, if you don't know how to adjust the settings, and if you don't know how to set the mode so that it actually contracts the muscle, then you actually won't be able to use electrical stimulation properly. So the machine I actually recommend is this one I actually picked off Amazon, the USA site, and basically this is a TENS machine which also helps to contract muscles very similarly to a electrical stimulation machine. And this will depend on the settings which you use on the machine. So right now it's showing you 120 hertz and 60 milliamps. And this is not ideal for stimulating muscles. In order to stimulate muscles, what you want is your settings to be around 150 to 300 milliamps and about 100 hertz. And these are the ideal parameters which are used to elicit a muscle contraction. So I hope that makes sense. And another thing, it is really up to the settings which you use which will determine how much you get out of electrical stimulation. A lot of people feel that they can just use a TENS machine or a electrical stimulation machine which a chiropractor uses to stimulate muscles in order to get the same results, but you cannot, because if you're just massaging the muscle, you're not really giving the brain that exact feeling of what it looked like and felt like to actually do something like it used to before stroke. In other words, you're just giving the brain a sense of what it felt like to do something. You're not actually giving the brain a visual of what it looked like to actually do something. And going back to what I said earlier with the fact that our brain learns from experience, the more reference points which your brain has whenever it's learning a new skill, for example, what it looks like, what it feels like, the more likely you'll be able to, the more reference points which your brain has whenever it's learning a skill, such as what it looks like, what it feels like, and how novel or how new or unique the experience is to the brain, in that whether or not you've experienced it before, the more likely you're actually able to see some instant changes from that exercise with the use of electrical stimulation. So those are just some key things to keep in mind, and I think it was really important to just run through those before we go on to the next slide, which is going to be some basic electrical stimulation placements which you can use to help address some very common problems such as foot drop, as well as general muscle tightness which you might be experiencing in recovery after stroke, or if you're looking to improve your walking after stroke. So these are basically your essential electrode placements for using your electrical stimulation machine, and these are basically places where you can put your electrodes to help address some common problems which you might experience after stroke. And I'll run through them right now. So in this first one, in this first picture, basically what you have is you have two electrodes on the outside of your shin, And basically what you're doing here is you're stimulating the main muscle which is used to lift up your ankle. And this muscle is called your tibialis anterior muscle. And this muscle is called your tibialis anterior muscle. And basically this muscle is used to help lift up your ankle. Now this electrode placement is really key or really crucial if you're in a situation where you find that you're experiencing quite a lot of foot drop and your calf muscles are quite tight. In that, by stimulating this muscle, you can actually train the brain to send signals to this muscle to help overcome that tightness in the calf, which might actually be stopping this muscle from activating. Now the next electrode placement is basically where you want to put the electrodes in order to stimulate your calf. And in this scenario, this is basically where you want to put the electrodes if you're looking to speed up your walking, or if you find that whenever you're walking, you're not pushing off your affected foot quite well, or you don't have that much plantar flexion. And by stimulating the calf muscle, what you'll find is that you'll actually be able to tap your foot down. And by practicing this over time, it will actually translate in your walking, in that you'll probably notice that your walking will be a little bit quicker, and that's because you're pushing off your affected foot a lot stronger. Okay, now in this third picture, this electrode placement is basically where you want to put the electrodes if you're in a situation where you find that your foot or your ankle is actually coming out to the side more, or supinating, as one of the posts in the group mentioned. And by stimulating this muscle group here, the muscle which you're stimulating is called your tibialis posterior. And basically this muscle is responsible for bringing your ankle in so that it doesn't tend to want to move out at a 45-degree angle whenever you're lifting it forward. So if you're in a situation where you find that your foot is supinating, or kind of, I guess, swinging out as you want to try and bring it forward, then this is probably a suitable fit for you, because it will actually train up some of the muscles which you use to bring your ankle inwards, so that you're not mainly relying on your hip to do all of the unnecessary work which would otherwise be performed by these smaller muscle groups like before your stroke. And then the final electrode placement is a very unique one, and this is basically where you want to put your electrodes if you're looking to stimulate, if you're looking to provide a little bit of stimulation on the outside of your leg. And basically this is what a lot of the products out there are doing. In other words, I think there's one product out there, it's called the Bioness 500. This is basically what the Bioness 500 is doing. It's basically providing some stimulation on the outside of your leg, as well as lifting up your ankle, and also extending some of your toes. So this is a really unique electrode placement, and basically it's used to both provide some stimulation on the outside of your leg, on the outside of your ankle or your leg, so that your brain gets a better reference point of what it feels like to actually put weight through that leg whenever you're walking, as well as when you're it's basically used as a sort of way of stimulating the leg whenever you're walking, so that your brain will get a sense of what it felt like to sort of send signals through your affected side whenever you walked before you had your stroke. And this is very similar to, like I said earlier, the Bioness machine, which is basically this thing which you put on your leg, which helps lift up your ankle as well as extend your toes. I probably repeated myself there. But as you can see, it's a very economical approach compared to spending $2,000 on a Bioness machine, which does the exact same thing as an electrical stimulation machine, which probably costs $50 or $75 on its own. It's just really the I guess the main thing behind electrical stimulation and any exercise you do is the knowledge of how to actually use it. And as we all know, all the theory in the world is great. However, if you don't know how to use it, it's essentially useless. The main thing in recovery after stroke is actually knowing how to apply the knowledge which you already have in order to speed up your results and see changes a lot quicker than you would if you were to just do conventional exercises for years and years, which would just lead to you spinning your own wheels. Now, if you are really interested in taking your recovery to the next level and really learning how to use electrical stimulation in the most advanced form, I do offer coaching over Facebook online, so you can message me directly for more information on that. However, these are basically just all the basic electrode placements which you can use in your recovery after stroke if you're looking to improve your walking. However, these will only get you so far. And with a greater understanding, you can actually use these and combine them with traditional exercises which your physiotherapist would typically give you to really boost the rate of your recovery and also see changes a lot quicker than you usually would. So some of these electrodes you can actually use them in different ways in different exercises, such as your sit to stands or bridges to actually overcome the plateau which you might actually encounter after you've been doing bridges or your sit to stands for a long period of time. So I hope that all makes sense. These are basically all of the locations which you can put your electrodes to basically address common issues which you might experience in your recovery after stroke. And one thing to keep in mind is that recovery after stroke is more or less kind of like chipping away at a giant stone and trying to refine movements and get them as close as possible to how they were before your stroke. And the reason why I say this is because when your brain first learned how to recover after you had your stroke, it actually took on a compensatory approach at first because it was very easy, and your brain is very lazy in that when you first had your stroke, your brain realized that one leg was actually better than the other, and it learnt that it could actually get by using the better leg to compensate for most of your walking. However, with the electrical stimulation, what you can do is you can actually use it in a way to actually fine-tune some of the movements and teach the brain the correct way of actually turning on some of the muscles which it should be turning on like it would have before you had your stroke. And by doing this over a long period of time in a consistent and high quality manner, you will be able to get very close. You will be able to refine the movements a lot quicker than if you were to take on traditional exercises where there is a risk that you might actually compensate even more because your brain isn't getting any feedback about your brain isn't getting any feedback about what it looks like and feels like to do something correctly. With electrical stimulation, like I mentioned earlier, it gives your brain the experience of what it looks like and feels like to actually perform a task or movement correctly like it would have before your stroke. In other words, it gives your brain sort of like a model of what it looks like, what it looks like to perform something successfully. And as I mentioned earlier, this is critical in your brain's ability to learn in your recovery after stroke, because it can actually help, it can aid your brain in making that blueprint as close as possible to how it used to be. Sorry, the blueprint in the brain of how it used to perform movements similar to before you had your stroke. So, when is it most appropriate to use electrical stimulation? Now, I have covered quite a lot in this presentation so far, and I have probably repeated myself more than once. I do apologize for that. But basically, electrical stimulation is your go-to tool in your stroke toolbox. Whenever you want to, whenever the conventional exercises which you've been doing from your therapist or which you've been given since you're discharged from hospital aren't providing you with the same benefit as they were initially. In other words, you've reached a plateau. And the reason why a plateau occurs, by the way, is because your brain has gotten so used to what it felt like to do that exercise that there's no reason to justify to the brain why it has to adapt itself to actually become a lot better at that skill, because there's nothing new to learn. So electrical stimulation is really, really effective to address issues such as foot drop, which is something which you can address with exercises. However, with electrical stimulation combined with exercise, you can actually speed up your brain's ability to overcome the issue of foot drop. And it can also be used to address any muscle tightness issues which you might be experiencing in your recovery after stroke, which actually might be stopping your brain from learning how to walk a lot efficiently or as well as you would like it to walk. In other words, the electrical stimulation can actually tip the odds in your favor in how you want your brain to learn. If you want to see changes a lot quickly, if you want to see changes very quickly, then you can use electrical stimulation, and with the correct guidance and support, integrate it with targeted exercises to really see quick changes. And therefore, you can help to improve the efficiency of your gait. And the last thing, electrical stimulation is also really good because it can also strengthen the hard to target muscles, which are very integral to the cosmetics or how good your gait looks like after stroke. So if you find that whenever you're walking, you find that your leg is swinging out to the side whenever you want to plant it forward, or you find that you're hitting your hip quite a lot, electrical stimulation can actually use to target some of the muscles which were actually used to help you walk before your stroke, so that some of these issues associated with recovery after stroke, such as the hip hitching, as well as the leg swinging forward whenever you walk, actually don't occur as often as you would like them to. So those are basically all the things which you need to know about electrical stimulation and its use in helping you to recover recover or improve your walking after stroke. Now, as I mentioned, if you are interested in really taking this to the next level and really learning how to apply the theory to your recovery so that you can see changes a lot quickly, feel free to shoot me a message on Facebook, and I'm open to sharing further information on that. But I hope that helps out. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comment section below. I am in Australia, by the way. I think a lot of the older members know that I'm in an awkward time zone. However, if you are looking for a very quick response, the best times to actually contact me would be around 7 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, or between 8 o'clock to 8:30 in the morning Eastern Daylight Time as well. The group is getting very busy, but I do try my best to answer all questions as soon as possible. So yeah, let me know, and I hope that helped out.